Every old lake has a secret. Not the kind written on tourist signs. Not the kind sold in gift shops beside postcards and cheap magnets. I mean the older secrets. The ones buried under black water, below the reach of sunlight, below the maps, below the stories people are comfortable repeating out loud. Because lakes are different from forests, different from abandoned houses, different from graveyards. A forest breathes around you. A house creaks. A graveyard sits still and lets you stare. But a lake hides everything. A lake can swallow a body and never give it back. It can preserve a dead thing for decades in cold, silent layers. It can turn calm in the morning and violent before dusk. It can look peaceful from the shore while something massive moves underneath, unseen, patient, and completely beyond your control. That is why almost every culture with deep water has its monster. Not a metaphor. Not always. From Scotland to Canada, from the Great Lakes to the frozen waters of Iceland, from native oral traditions to medieval saints' legends, people have described long necks rising through fog, black humps rolling against the current, horse-headed creatures dragging victims from the banks, and pale shapes moving beneath boats like drowned giants. Some of these creatures were warnings. Some were gods. Some were demons. Some were said to be flesh and blood. And some were worse, because they did not behave like animals at all. Lake monster lore is often treated like a joke now. A blurry photograph, a plastic dinosaur head in a tourist shop, a local mascot printed on t-shirts. But that is the cleaned-up version. The older stories are soaked in fear. They begin with missing children, with fishermen who came back shaking, with animals found torn open near the shore, with canoes struck from below, with people hearing voices call from the water in the voice of someone dead. And once you strip away the jokes, the cartoons, the carnival posters, and the safe little museum displays, you find something much darker. You find the human terror of deep water. You find the fear that the lake is not empty, and maybe never was. Long before cameras, newspapers, and paranormal investigators, lake monsters belonged to oral tradition. They lived in the stories families told at night, especially in places where water meant survival. A lake could feed a village, carry a canoe, freeze into a road, reflect the sky. It could also kill without leaving a wound. That made it sacred, and anything sacred has teeth. In Celtic lands, water monsters were not always strange animals. They were often spiritual predators. The Kelpie, one of the most feared creatures in Scottish folklore, was said to appear near rivers and lochs in the shape of a horse. Sometimes beautiful, sometimes dripping wet, with a mane tangled like weeds. A traveller might climb onto its back, thinking it was tame. Then the skin of the beast would turn adhesive. The rider could not get off. The Kelpie would charge into the water, dragging the victim beneath the surface. The body might wash up later with the insides eaten out. In some versions, only the liver floated back. This was not a campfire creature meant to delight children. This was a warning about lonely banks, strange animals, and water that looked too inviting. The Eachweasker was worse. Also from Scottish and Irish folklore, this waterhorse was said to live in lochs and the sea. Unlike the Kelpie, it could take human form. It could walk among people. It could seduce. It could wait. The detail that made villagers whisper was simple. If you saw sand or water weeds in a person's hair, do not go near them. That was the sign. Not horns, not claws, not glowing eyes, just wet hair. That is the oldest kind of horror. The kind that looks almost human until it is too late. Then, there are the dragons of European lakes. Not always winged beasts curled over gold, but long serpentine things living beneath still water. In medieval stories, saints often defeated lake monsters, which tells you something important. These creatures were not treated as ordinary wildlife. They were spiritual enemies, unclean forces, things that had to be confronted by holy power. The most famous lake monster in the world comes from this same old darkness, Loch Ness. Today, Nessie is almost cute. She has a nickname, a silhouette, a tourism industry. But the first widely known story tied to the monster is not cute at all. In the 6th century, Saint Columba was said to have encountered a beast in the river Ness, which flows from the loch. According to the legend, the creature had already attacked a man. When another man entered the water, the beast rose again, rushing toward him with an open mouth. Columba made the sign of the cross and commanded it to go no farther. The creature stopped, then it fled. Whether that story is religious legend, misidentified wildlife, or something older folded into Christian writing, it sets the tone for Loch Ness from the beginning. The thing in the water was not shy. It was not playful. It was a predator. The loch itself helps the legend survive. Loch Ness is enormous, cold and deep. Its water is dark with peat, turning visibility into a cruel joke. You can stand beside it on a grey day and feel how easily the surface rejects you. It does not sparkle. It does not invite. It sits there like a wound cut through the highlands. For centuries, local stories mentioned strange things in the loch. Then, in the 1930s, the monster exploded into modern fame. A road was built along the water. More people could see the loch from better angles. Reports began to multiply. In 1933, a couple claimed they saw a massive creature rolling and plunging in the water. Another witness described something with a long neck crossing the road and vanishing into the loch. That land sighting is especially disturbing because it breaks the one rule that makes lake monsters bearable. You can tell yourself they stay in the water. You can tell yourself you are safe on shore. Then someone says they saw the thing dragging itself across the road in the dark, and suddenly the boundary is gone. Some accounts describe a long neck and small head. Others describe humps. Others speak of a wide back, like an overturned boat. There are sonar contacts, disputed photographs, hoaxes, sincere witnesses, scientists rolling their eyes, believers refusing to let go. But the paranormal side of Loch Ness runs deeper than sightings. There are stories of people feeling watched from the water before anything appears. Stories of strange lights moving over the loch. Stories of electronic equipment failing near certain spots. Divers have described the psychological weight of descending into that blackness, where visibility drops and the cold presses against the skull. One old idea says Nessie is not an animal trapped in the lake, but a survivor of prehistoric time, a plesiosaur somehow left behind. That theory has problems, many of them. Air-breathing reptiles would need to surface often. A breeding population would leave more evidence. The food supply would be questioned. The science does not bend easily, but folklore does not need permission from science. Another idea is stranger. Maybe the monster is not always physical. Maybe certain bodies of water act like doors. Maybe old places, deep places, places soaked in death and ritual, sometimes let something push through. Not fully, not permanently. Just enough to make a shape on the surface. Enough to leave a wake. Enough to stare at a witness from the fog. That idea shows up again and again, under different names. Across the Atlantic, Lake Champlain has its own shadow. Champ. Lake Champlain stretches between New York and Vermont, reaching into Quebec, long and narrow, with cold depths and a history that predates the United States. Indigenous traditions in the region include stories of powerful beings in the water, though modern retellings often oversimplify them. European settlers later added their own sightings, and over time, Champ became one of North America's most famous lake monsters. Descriptions vary, but many sound familiar. A long, dark body, a serpentine neck, several humps, movement too smooth for a floating log and too deliberate for waves. The lake was a place of travel, trade, war, and drowning. During the colonial period and the American Revolution, ships moved across it. Men died on it, wrecks went down, cold water kept its dead. That matters. Haunted water and monster lore often grow together. People see something rise near a place where a ship sank. They hear knocking beneath the hull. They describe a shape following them too closely, pacing their boat from below. In modern Champ reports, witnesses sometimes claim the lake goes unnaturally quiet before the sighting. Birds stop calling, small waves flatten, the air feels held in place. Then the water bulges, not splashes, bulges, as if something huge has pushed up from beneath and is deciding whether to break through. One account often repeated in local lore involves people on the lake seeing a dark, elongated form traveling against the chop, not drifting, not bobbing, moving with intention. The witnesses watched it for long enough to understand it was not a branch, not a deer, not a fish at the surface. Then it sank without a sound. No grand finale, no roar, no proof, just absence. That is what makes these encounters hard to shake. A bear leaves tracks. a whale leaves a spout. A known animal behaves within the limits of the known world. Lake monsters often appear just long enough to ruin a person's certainty. Then, they vanish. Farther west, in British Columbia, another old water legend carries an even darker edge. Ogopogo. Before the catchy modern name, the being was known in Silux's Okanagan tradition as Naha-Itk, often described as a powerful water spirit associated with Okanagan Lake. Modern monster culture turned it into a creature, a serpent, a local celebrity. The older tradition deserves more respect than that. It was not simply a beast people hoped to photograph. It was a force tied to place, danger, and the need to show respect when crossing the water. Stories tell of offerings made before travel. They tell of storms, drownings, and a presence in the lake that could not be treated casually. That is a pattern in indigenous lake monster traditions across North America. The being is not just an animal, it is part of a relationship between people and place. It can punish arrogance, it can guard the water. It can represent the fact that nature is alive, aware, and capable of taking back what it wants. Modern Ogopogo sightings often describe a long, dark body moving in waves, sometimes with several humps appearing in sequence. Witnesses have claimed to see it from shore, from boats, from hillsides. Some say it moves like a giant eel, others say it looks like a serpent too large to belong in fresh water. But there are stranger accounts around Okanagan Lake too. People have reported feelings of dread while alone near the water at night. Boats being struck from below, sudden waves with no passing craft, a sense of being followed along the shoreline by something just under the surface. One of the most unsettling ideas in Ogopogo lore is not that something lives in the lake, it is that something claims the lake. There is a difference. An animal avoids you, a territorial animal may attack you, but a spirit that claims a place can wait for generations. It can become part of the weather, part of the shoreline, part of the silence. You do not hunt that kind of thing. You survive it. In the American Midwest, Lake Erie has Bessie, also called the Lake Erie Monster. Sightings tend to describe a snake-like creature, sometimes grey, sometimes dark, sometimes as long as a bus. Reports date back generations, with some stories involving fishermen seeing a massive serpent-like form near the surface. Lake Erie is shallow compared to the other Great Lakes, but that does not make it gentle. It is famous for sudden weather changes and violent waves. Ships have gone down fast. People have died close enough to shore to see land while realizing they would never reach it. That kind of water breeds stories. There are accounts of something striking boats, something moving in the water with a head like a snake, something leaving behind a wake that crossed the normal pattern of the waves. The Great Lakes are not lakes in the way people imagine lakes. They are inland seas. They have shipwrecks, storms, currents, and depths that feel wrong when you stand beside them. Lake Superior alone has a reputation that borders on supernatural. It is cold, vast, and merciless. Bodies lost in it often do not behave like bodies lost elsewhere. The water can keep them down, keep them intact, keep them. So when people speak of monsters in the Great Lakes, it does not feel ridiculous if you have ever stood on those shores in bad weather. It feels ancient. Then there is Lake Iliamna in Alaska. This one feels different. Iliamna is remote, massive, and surrounded by wilderness that does not care about human comfort. The lake has long carried stories of enormous creatures beneath its surface. Some describe them as giant fish, some as serpents, some as things with square heads and dark bodies that rise suddenly near boats. Unlike some lake monster legends, Iliamna has a biological suspect that is genuinely frightening. Large sleeper sharks or massive sturgeon-like fish have been suggested by some as possible explanations, though no definitive answer has settled the matter. The lake is connected by rivers to Bristol Bay, and Alaska is not short on creatures that make a person feel small. But the stories are not limited to simple misidentification. Pilots have claimed to see long shapes moving below the surface. Locals have spoken of animals disappearing near the water. Some fishermen tell of moments when something enormous passed under the boat, and the mood changed instantly from curiosity to panic. There are lake monster stories where people want a photograph. Iliamna stories often feel like people want distance. That is more convincing in its own way. A hoaxer wants attention. A terrified witness wants the thing to stay away. In Argentina, Nahuel Huapi Lake has Nahuelito, a creature said to haunt the cold waters near the Andes. The legend pulls from indigenous stories, settler accounts, and modern monster fever. Descriptions include a plesiosaur-like form, a serpent, or a huge dark animal surfacing in the lake. The setting is almost too perfect. Deep water, mountains, mist. Old stories. Isolated stretches where a person can feel alone even in daylight. Some sightings describe a disturbance moving across the water with no boat nearby. Others speak of a long neck rising briefly, then sliding back beneath the surface. There are also reports of strange lights and unidentified objects near the lake, giving Nahuelito a more paranormal flavor than many cryptids. That is where lake monsters begin to blur with other kinds of phenomena. Because if every witness described the same animal, with the same behavior, in the same conditions, the story would be easier. Strange, but easier. Instead, lake monsters attract the impossible. They appear and disappear without enough surface activity. They are seen in lakes where breeding populations seem unlikely. They show up near storms, lights, tragedies, and places with older spiritual traditions. They are sometimes described less like animals and more like manifestations, a shape borrowed by something beneath the world. Sweden has Storsjöodjuret, the great lake monster of Lake Storsjön. Like Nessie, it has a long history and a protected place in regional folklore. Stories describe a serpent-like creature with humps, sometimes with a dog-like head or fins. One legend says 2 trolls were boiling something beside the lake when the mixture created a strange creature. It escaped into the water and grew enormous. Again, the pattern repeats. Something unnatural is made, then hidden in a lake. Human error, forbidden creation, water as containment. That idea shows up so often it feels like a memory. Around the world, people have used lakes as dumping grounds for shame, weapons, bodies, offerings, evidence, secrets. In folklore, lakes are not just habitats, they are vaults, and vaults can leak. The Congo Basin has one of the most debated and mysterious water cryptids, Mokelembembe. It is often associated with rivers, swamps, and remote bodies of water, rather than one lake, but its lore belongs in the same family. Local descriptions have been interpreted by outsiders as resembling a long-necked dinosaur, though those interpretations are complicated by translation, cultural context, and decades of sensationalism. Still, the stories describe a large creature living in deep water and swamp channels, powerful enough to disturb boats and feared enough that people did not treat it like a harmless animal. Whether Mokelembembe is a misidentified known animal, a surviving species, a spirit being, or a legend shaped by outsiders' expectations, the fear around it is real. Remote water hides life well. Swamps are worse than lakes because they do not even offer a clean shoreline. They pull at the legs. They rot and breathe. They make distance impossible to judge. A monster in a lake is frightening. A monster in a swamp feels like the land itself has become infected. In North America, there are countless lesser-known lake creatures, and some are more disturbing because they never became famous enough to be softened. Tahoe Tessie is said to inhabit Lake Tahoe, one of the deepest lakes in the United States. Stories describe a large serpent-like being in the blue depths. Tahoe is beautiful, but that beauty can turn cold fast. The lake drops into darkness with startling speed. People vanish there. Bodies have been rumored to remain preserved in the depths because of the cold, though stories often grow larger with retelling. That is the atmosphere Tessie belongs to. Clear water above, a graveyard below. Flathead Lake in Montana has its own monster, often described as a large eel-like or serpent-like creature. Reports go back many decades. Witnesses have seen wakes, dark forms, and objects moving in ways that do not match boats, logs, or known animals. Like many lake monster locations, Flathead is large enough to make certainty difficult and old enough in human memory to feel watched. Then, there are the darker water beings from native traditions, such as horned serpents and underwater panthers. These are not lake monsters in the tourist sense. They are powerful mythic beings, often associated with deep water, storms, danger, and spiritual power. In some traditions, they are connected to the underworld or to forces beneath the earth. The underwater panther, known in different forms across various indigenous cultures, is often described as a dangerous being associated with lakes and rivers. It may have horns, scales, feline qualities, or a long tail. It is not just a creature, it represents power from below, the dangerous counterpart to beings of the sky. That vertical world matters. Sky above, humans in the middle, water below. The monster is not simply hiding in the lake. It comes from beneath our layer of existence. That is why lake monster encounters often carry the emotional weight of trespass. People do not merely see something. They feel they have crossed a line. They leave the water. They stop fishing there. They refuse to return at night. The official explanation rarely matters to them afterward. A log does not make you sell your boat. A wave does not make a grown person cry in the car afterward. A fish does not make you feel as if your name was spoken from under the dock. And yes, those stories exist too. Not just sightings, encounters. A man alone at a lake after sunset hears someone calling from the water, not shouting for help, calling him by name. The voice sounds like his brother. His brother has been dead for years. He walks toward the dock before sense catches up with fear. The water is flat. No swimmer. No boat. No face. Then something knocks from beneath the boards. Once. Twice. 3 times. He runs before the third knock finishes echoing through his bones. In another story, a woman camping near a remote lake wakes in the night because every insect has gone silent. That is what she remembers most. Not a roar. Not a splash. Silence. She steps outside and sees a pale line moving just beneath the surface, longer than any animal she can name. It glides parallel to shore. Slow, smooth, deliberate. Then it stops. The pale shape turns toward her. There are no visible eyes, but she knows it is looking. The next morning, every stone along that stretch of shore is wet several feet above the waterline, as if something heavy dragged itself out and went back in. No tracks, just a wide smear in the mud and a smell like rotten weeds. Another account tells of 2 men night fishing from a small boat when their motor dies. The lake is calm, too calm. Their flashlight catches mist hanging over the surface, and beneath the boat, something taps the hull. Not a bump, a tap. Then another, moving in a circle. One man leans over the side and sees what he thinks is the reflection of his own face in the black water. But the face is too low, too deep, and it smiles before he does. They row back without speaking. The next day, one of them discovers long scratches along the bottom of the boat. Not bite marks, scratches, like fingers. These are the encounters that never make it into cheerful monster documentaries. They do not fit the prehistoric survivor angle. They do not fit the undiscovered species angle. They do not sell plush toys. They suggest intelligence. Worse, they suggest mimicry. Water has always been tied to the dead. Rivers carry souls in myth. Lakes hold sacrifices. Wells grant wishes because they descend into darkness. Baptism, drowning, cleansing, execution, burial at sea. Water has never been just water to the human mind. So when something speaks from the lake, or wears the shape of a horse, or appears where people have drowned, it is not random. It is part of a very old fear. The fear that the dead are not gone. The fear that the deep is not empty space, but occupied territory. The fear that some waters remember every body they have taken. That may be why lake monster lore survives, even when individual sightings are debunked. One photo can be fake, one witness can be mistaken, one ripple can be a fish, one shadow a log, one monster a wave. But the pattern remains. Across continents, across languages, across centuries, people keep looking at deep water and seeing something looking back. Skeptics often ask a fair question. If these monsters exist, where is the evidence? It is a good question, but folklore answers with another. How much evidence has the water already eaten? Bones sink, bodies drift, cameras fail, witnesses panic, night ruins distance, fog destroys scale, cold water changes everything. And human beings are not as good at seeing as we pretend to be. Still, the lack of proof does not explain the emotional consistency of these stories. The details change. The dread does not. A person sees a long neck in Scotland, humps in Vermont, a serpent in British Columbia, a pale thing in a northern lake, a horned force in old native traditions, a worm in Iceland, a water horse in the Highlands. Different masks, same black stage. There is also the matter of liminality. Lakes are thresholds. They are not land, not ocean. They are enclosed worlds. A lake can sit in the middle of a community and still contain depths no one has touched. You can grow up beside one, swim in it, fish it, skate over it, scatter ashes on it, and still have no idea what lies at the bottom. That contradiction unsettles us. Familiar surface, unknown beneath. And lake monsters live in that contradiction. They are the shape we give to everything below the surface of ordinary life. Grief, memory, death, predation, ancient nature. The part of the world that does not need us and never did. Maybe some sightings are animals, giant eels, sturgeon, seals where seals should not be, waves crossing oddly, floating trees, swimming moose, birds seen at strange angles, tricks of cold air and distance. Maybe some are lies. People lie for attention. Towns lie for tourism. Newspapers exaggerate. A good monster brings money to a quiet place. But not every story feels like a performance. Some feel like a confession. The witness does not smile while telling it. They lower their voice. They pause at the wrong moments. They remember the smell, the cold, the pressure in the air. They remember how the dog refused to go near the water. They remember how their father, a man who laughed at ghosts, packed the campsite before sunrise and never explained why. Those details matter. Fear leaves fingerprints. Lake monsters endure because they do not belong fully to cryptozoology, folklore, religion, or ghost stories. They slip between categories, the same way they slip beneath the surface. Try to call one an animal, and it behaves like a spirit. Try to call it a spirit, and it leaves awake. Try to dismiss it, and someone sober, local, and tired of being asked about it says they saw the thing with their own eyes. That is the trap. The lake never gives enough, only a glimpse, a sound, a dark hump rolling once in bad weather, a shape under the boat, a voice from the fog. The rest happens inside the witness, where no scientist can measure it and no skeptic can reach. There is a reason the old stories warned people not to answer voices near the water. A reason they told children not to climb onto strange horses by the loch. A reason offerings were made before crossing certain lakes. A reason fishermen still avoid particular coves without admitting why. The modern world teaches us to treat water as scenery, as recreation, as property with a view. The old world knew better. Water is not passive, deep water least of all. It keeps its own weather, its own dead, its own time. A lake can lie still for 100 years, then rise in one night and take a road, a house, a family, a name. It does not hate, it does not forgive, it simply receives. That may be the truest monster. Not a dinosaur, not a serpent, not a ghost horse with weeds in its mane. The real horror is the deep itself, and the possibility that consciousness can grow there in ways we do not understand. Something old enough to be mistaken for legend. Something patient enough to let generations laugh. Something that knows the safest place to hide is inside a story no one believes anymore. Picture the shore at night. No moon, no boats, no voices, just dark water touching stone, again and again, with the soft, wet patience of a tongue against teeth. You stand there longer than you should. At first, the lake looks empty. Then a ripple moves against the wind. Far out, something breaks the surface. Not enough to identify, just enough to change your life. A low shape rises, then another, then a length of darkness between them, too long to be separate waves. The water slides off it without splashing. It moves with the slow confidence of a thing that has never needed to hurry. Your body understands before your mind does. This is not a log. This is not a fish. This is not meant to be seen. Then it stops moving. The lake goes flat, and somehow, in all that darkness, you feel attention settle on you. Not from the trees, not from the sky, from below. That is when the old stories come back. Every warning, every drowned name, every tale people laughed at over drinks because laughter feels safer than belief. Do not go near the water after dark. Do not follow voices from the shore. Do not mock what lives beneath. Do not assume the monster is trapped in the lake. Maybe the lake is where it rests. Maybe the shore is where it feeds. And maybe the only reason these stories have survived for so long is because somewhere, every few years, someone sees the water move wrong. Someone hears the knock beneath the boat. Someone watches a horse with wet black eyes step out of the reeds. Someone leans over the dock and sees a face looking up from too far down. Then they run home, lock the door, and spend the rest of their life avoiding lakes after sunset. Not because they believe in monsters, because they know what belief costs. The legends are not asking us to prove them. They are waiting for us to forget them. That is when people get careless. That is when they swim alone. That is when they walk too close to the edge. That is when they hear their name drifting across the water in the voice of someone they buried years ago. And if they answer, the lake answers back. Not with words, with movement, with depth, with a shape rising from the black, older than the road behind you, older than the town, older than the language you would use to scream. Every old lake has a secret. Some are made of bone, some are made of memory, some have teeth, and some are still hungry.